WOCA, Ocala, 70 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. It's the first day of school, and all of a sudden, the house is empty. All of a sudden, wait a minute, where are the kids? Wait a minute, it's quiet in here. Wait a minute, I can read a book? Wait a minute, I can read a book! This is a good one. Kristin Harmel is on the phone. She's the author of The Winemaker's Wife. I was just looking at it and had read some of the pieces earlier in the week. This is a book that connects the 1940s to now. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting, very interesting story. I don't know if it's historically, I don't know if it's based on a true story is what I'm trying to say. But let's find out. The Winemaker's Wife, an historical novel. There's a book signing tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
At the Writer's Block bookstore in Quantum Leap Winery.
Yep.
Really? Mm-hmm. Where's that, in Orlando?
Orlando.
Oh, I see it here. Yeah, 1312 Wilfred Drive in Orlando. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow it's 6:30. Oh, maybe we should go down. Well, I can't promise that.
No, but
I go to bed at 8:30.
Try.
I'm in Ocala. Kristin, good morning, Kristin. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm okay. And you're in Orlando right now?
I am. That is where I live. Yep.
All right, excellent. I think you've written a classic. I mean, everything about this book seems like something that'll be around for years.
Well, thank you. That's such a nice thing to say. I appreciate it.
So where is it based on a true story?
So it is based on true stories of resistance activity in Champagne, France, but the main characters are not based on real people. So the book is populated by real historical figures, but the characters at the center are, invented in my head.
Okay, so give us an idea of the story so we can start asking questions about it.
Sure. So it's a novel set in mainly in World War II Champagne, France. And it's about two women who live and work at a champagne house, a small family-run champagne house. One of whom is the wife of the champagne house owner, and the other of whom is the wife of the head winemaker. So they're completely polar opposites. They don't get along with each other, and when World War II begins, they don't turn to each other or their husbands for comfort. They sort of turn in different directions, and ultimately they become involved in the resistance. And there's secrets and lies and betrayals and all sorts of things that unfold sort of to the backdrop of all the real things that happened in Champagne during the war.
Okay, that's the 40s part of this. And is that, when you were writing it, did research play a role in how the story unfolded?
It really did. So this is the fourth novel I've written set during the World War II time period. And they've all required a lot of research, and each one has sort of led to the next. It's something I've found in the research for one that has sort of inspired me to research the next. But I found that in this one I had to delve a little bit deeper and a little bit further than I had in the past, simply because my previous novels have been set primarily in Paris, which is a much easier place to find information about as it pertains to World War II. Champagne, less has been written about what happened in Champagne during the war. And so I had to read, or I had the privilege to read, several books in the English language about Champagne and about, there were even a few that sort of directly talked about wine and war in the various wine regions in France. But I also had to have French books translated into English. I had to pay for translation so I could fill in some of the blanks. And then, gosh, life is difficult. I actually had to go to Champagne and spend some time here. So
was that fun? That must have been fun.
That was not such a hardship.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Do you know what I find interesting? I mean, it's obvious that politically our roots, everything comes from the past, obviously, no matter what era you're talking about. Politically speaking, the lines that are redrawn because of war and all that. But what I think a book like yours shows us how we are connected culturally also to that previous era. And it is interesting how we still somehow connect to the 40s. We're already up almost to the 20s in this century, so it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And we are sort of connected, right?
Well, yeah, it's a crazy thought. And, World War II fiction is so popular right now. And it's a strange thing to think about because the war ended almost 75 years ago. I mean, this month marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of France, for example. So, why does it feel so current? Why do we still feel so connected to it? And I think that it's because the lessons people learned 75 years ago really still resonate today. And the things that they were learning are things that we could probably still learn right now. So I think many of the issues of that war still feel very current. And I think that for many of us, myself included, reading about that period of the past connects us with a generation that's disappearing, whether it be our parents or our grandparents. But, sort of hearing about a time period that they lived through brings their lives home to us a little bit more, I think.
And that's how the generations are connected in your book with Liv and
absolutely.
Her grandmother.
Yes, so in the book there's a grandmother in the present day. So there's a present day story that sort of ties the World War II story together. And in the present day, there is a grandmother named Grandma Edith who brings her granddaughter Liv back to Champagne to reveal some deep family secrets that Liv never knew existed. So it's kind of neat because I get to research a lot of what happened in Champagne in the past, but I also got to put in the book the Champagne that I know and loved today, which was nice. It was nice to be able to put in sort of both time periods.
And is the Champagne of today, is it, I don't mean to use the word stuck in a negative way, but is it still 40s-ish? Does it still feel 40s-ish?
Not really. It's a really, so the main towns that this focuses on in the book, there's the town of Reims, which is, it looks like it should be Reims, Reims, which is the largest city in the Champagne region. And it's a fascinating city to visit because it's actually, to me, very unlike anywhere else in France. It's about a 45-minute train ride from Paris, and it was actually almost completely destroyed during World War I. So the architecture of the city is Art Deco because it was basically entirely rebuilt in the 1920s.
Oh, wow.
So there are a lot of buildings that stand from the past, but it's a really very interesting blend of the old and the new. But it also was a very important city in French history, and it's a larger city than I think many people appreciate. So visiting there almost feels like you're stepping into a smaller Paris, including the fact that their main cathedral is very, very similar, at least from the outside, to the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. It's called Notre Dame de Reims. So it's just an amazing place, but there's a taste of the past, but it does feel very present and modern, which is really neat. And then you go outside of France to villages like Ville-d'Aumange, which is where part of this book takes place, and that feels a little bit more like stepping back in time.
So tell me about Liv. Is the younger woman in today, 2019, right?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Tell me about her and why it's important to understand what happened 70-something years ago.
So Liv, as this story opens, is very adrift in her life, and her husband has just left her in sort of the most cliched way possible. She's in her early 40s. She's just having that feeling of how on earth do I reinvent myself? I don't know who I am. And she's just lost her job as well because it was connected to her husband. So when her grandmother shows up, it is sort of a secret that her grandmother, in my mind, perhaps never wanted to share with her, but realizes now the grandmother's 99, and I think the grandmother is realizing now that if she doesn't give Liv back this piece of her identity, which ties so deeply into the past, Liv will never really know who she is, and that'll sort of cause her to always be adrift. And so it is, in some parts, for Liv to be able to move forward, but I believe it's also for Grandma Edith, the 99-year-old super spry and sassy grandmother, to sort of unburden her soul after all these years. She has some things to say, and they will change everything.
You do also bring to the forefront the brutality of the Nazis. I mean, especially when, Celine was trying to protect the baby David. That was a vicious part of the book, but it's so true.
Yeah, it's astounding to me to think that those things happened in the lifetimes of people that we still, know and are people who are still around. These things happened, while they were in their, younger years. It's the brutality of the Nazis in so many of the places that they occupied was so unnecessary, and just, I think, terrifying to the people. And I think in a strange way, it's what made a lot of people stand up. I mean, so this book is very much, or at least in part, about resistance and about how in one person's life, you can make the decision to stand up for good, or you can make the decision to stay silent. And I think that it was that brutality that in many cases made people say, you know what, I can't take this anymore. I have to stand up.
Is that spirit still there? Or that spirit of resistance?
It was there very much in the 1940s in France, and I think that in France, particularly where the resistance movement was very strong, there is still a spirit of we're not going to take it when people feel a sense of injustice, and I think that that's something we see when they're protesting in the streets now and things like that.
Yeah, I'm glad that people do that. I'm glad that we as human beings realize that we really should resist when somebody like a Hitler comes around, or any political leader, even if it's the school board, something a low level politics like that. If it's not what we want, we should resist it. We should have something to say about it. I have kind of a superficial question about this, though.
Sure.
In the English speaking world, we seem to have a love affair with the music of the 40s. Is the same thing?
Okay.
Is the same thing true in France and with the like 1940s French music? Does it still get played in France?
Well, I think so, because I think it's so associated with sort of the cafe culture. I mean, I think so, but I don't know that I can 100% answer that accurately. To me, 1940s French music really evokes that, sitting in a cafe with a cup of cappuccino in front of you, watching the world go by with a newspaper in front of you.
I think that's what I was thinking of. You just described exactly what I was thinking of. But I think some of the music did cross the line, too. I think that obviously we had a lot of French songs that were making their way into our radio waves here in America.
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
And you have the two women, Inez and Celine, and they seem to be not friendly, but then they were, through the circumstances, which I don't want to say, they seem to support each other.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing to explore in this book. They were both young women during the war, Inez and Celine, and I think in many ways they functioned like young women in regard to each other at first. There was jealousy there that I think neither of them acknowledged to each other or to themselves. And I think rather than feeling like allies, they set themselves up as competitors. And I think that's something that people have the tendency to do in relationships, particularly earlier on in life, before we realize sort of we're all in this together. And so it sort of created some unnecessary drama and unnecessary feelings of exclusion, which really reverberate throughout the book and cause them to make bad decisions.
The book is called The Winemaker's Wife. It actually comes out tomorrow, and it's already doing well on Amazon. I'm always amazed when I see a book that does well before it actually comes out. And I like the fact that it's available in audiobook as well as the normal two-print versions on Kindle. So, I mean, you got it all covered there. Were you happy with the way the audiobook turned out?
Yeah, Simon & Schuster Audio does a really good job, and I know it sounds like I'm supposed to say that because they're my publisher, but they really do. And this was one of the few times, as well as with my last book, The Rue Monroe Amelie, that they actually gave me the chance to review and approve the narrators. So they gave me some choices of narrators. And it was really interesting because I feel like it's something that you can easily get wrong. I mean, if the voice is really just wrong for the character, the book's never going to read correctly, right? Mm-hmm. So this book is actually narrated by three women, because the book it unfolds from three different viewpoints, from Inez, Liv, and Celine.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And so it's narrated by three women, and I get to have a voice in choosing those three women, which was awesome, and I think they did a fabulous job.
And you also talk about the caves below the house and the business establishment where the resistance was able to move some of the Jewish people out.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say about the caves. They're just such a fascinating part of the Champagne region that it's just different than anywhere else. So in Reims, the main city, the caves were dug, like over 1,000 years ago by the Romans, and they were chalk quarries initially. So they were dug out to build buildings, not to create wine caves. But it turned out they were the perfect places for wine to age, and that was something that developed over time. So if you visit Champagne now and you walk through some of those caves, they feel like just these dark, mysterious mazes. It's an absolutely incredible thing. And so it's easy when you walk through them to understand how during World War II, people could have hidden there, or the resistance could have hidden weapons there, which was sort of another element of things that took place in that region. So it's just inspiring. If you ever have a chance to visit that part of France, it's just an interesting thing to do. And like I said, it's only about a 45-minute train ride from Paris. And also during World War I, which I don't really talk about much in this book, those caves were a place where people lived. They were underneath the earth. And Reims, in particular, was bombarded continuously for over 1,000 days. And so it was completely dangerous for people to live above ground. They would have been, buildings were being blown to smithereens left and right. So the entire society moved underneath the ground into these caves. So it's amazing to see, to be down there and to think that actually happened a century ago.
That is interesting. Wow. You make me want to go and see it for myself. So how did this happen for you? How did you grew up, where did you grow up?
I'm originally from Boston, but I grew up in St. Pete, Florida.
Oh, okay. And so how did the fascination with France become part of your life?
So when I was in my early 20s, about a year after I had graduated from the University of Florida, go Gators, I was working for People magazine, and I found out that I had maxed out my hours for the year. It was April. I had nothing to do again until August, and I had all this money saved up, and I made the spontaneous decision to go live in Paris for the summer. And I fell in love with it that summer. I was just working like crazy, working for magazines and freelancing and trying to build that part of my career. And it was just sort of a much needed opportunity to take a breath. And that was when I first started writing my first novel, which I sold in 2004. It came out in 2006. And I think beginning that period of my life, that chapter of my life, writing books in Paris, has forever attached me to Paris. So Paris just has my heart. And it's someplace I travel back to as frequently as I can.
Wow, that's exciting.
And as I've delved more and more into the World War II history there, I've found just these incredible stories of resistance that take place outside of Paris, too. So it's just an incredible place. It's very inspiring to me.
And the relationship when Inez was married to Michelle, she thought everything would be like wine and roses and things like that. She would be part of society, and she didn't really realize what was going to be happening.
Yeah, it's I think that's perhaps something that a lot of us do. A lot of people do. I mean, I'm super happily married now, and everything's great. But I know that a lot of times in relationships, before I began dating my husband, I think I fooled myself into thinking, well, this is what this one's going to be like. I think you sort of write the story in your head before things unfold. And I think that is what.
Yeah.
That's what Inez does at the beginning of this book. She thinks she's just marrying into this wonderful life where she'll be, the wife of the man who owns this glorious champagne house. Everything's going to be perfect, and World War II might not really be happening, and whatever. And then obviously that's not the reality. So it's a real wake-up call for her.
I'm a big fan of good dialogue, and you've got a lot of great dialogue in this book. So let's see. You are going to be tomorrow And that's kind of appropriate now that we've heard more of the story. You're at the what is it called? The Quantum Leap Winery.
It's the Quantum Leap Winery. It's right near downtown Orlando, just a little bit north of downtown, kind of right off the I-4 and the 408. That general area, if anybody is familiar with that at all. And it's a great little winery. They don't grow any of their grapes here. They grow them all elsewhere and import them, but they press and finish them here. It's really interesting. And so this will actually be my, I think, third time I've launched a book there, because one of our huge local independent bookstores called Writer's Block, which is in Winter Park, has a great partnership with Quantum Leap. I believe they call their series Wine, Wisdom, and Words, something like that. And they bring authors in and have them give book talks. But because I'm local, and because I'm actually launching my book there the day that it comes out, it's going to be, I think, a big fun shindig. So lots of wine. I'll be talking about the book. I'll be signing books for anyone who wants to buy one. And it's just super fun. I think we already have 100 tickets sold. I think it's going to be a big event. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we have to buy tickets for this.
You can, or you can just come in. So the ticket, if you want to buy it online, you can do it through Writer's Block Bookstore. It's $6, and that includes a glass of wine. But you can also just show up without buying a ticket in advance, which, since we're just a day out, I think that's fine to do, just to show up and pay for your glasses of wine as you go.
I like that.
Oh my God,
like that.
what? So exciting!
And the Winter Park is so charming. I've been there, and I just love the area. I really do want to go back down there because it is really most excellent.
It really is, and it's not that far from Ocala. I mean, I think we tend to think of each other as super far away, but it's, you just hop right on the turnpike and you're there, right?
Yeah.
Is that where we rode the bicycles?
No,
that's a different place. Okay.
Yeah, Winter Garden is where we rode
Winter
the
Garden.
bicycles.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't been to Winter Park on them yet.
Kristin, let's see. I found the book on Amazon. It comes out tomorrow, but you can buy it today. You can even get the audiobook, and I actually have a copy of the book. So if I have one listener who would like the copy that was sent to us, you can call me right now. I'll pick one at random. I'm going to buy my own copy. I'll probably get the audiobook. I'll listen to it in my car. Yeah. Let's see. So, and you have a website too. What is your website?
It's KristinHarmel.com, and that's Kristin, Kristin. A lot of people want to spell it with an E, but it's an I-N. Harmel, Harmel.com, KristinHarmel.com.
Okay, very good. Well, it's nice to get to know you, Kristin. I don't know. I see great things for you. I don't know if you want Hollywood to knock on your door, but I bet you they do. Or if they have,
yeah? Your lips, I'll take it, please.
I just think it just seems like a natural to lend to a film. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I've had a lot of. We've had. This is my 11th novel, I think. I was counting them the other. I think it's 11. And I've sold options to several of my books before, but Hollywood being Hollywood, some things work out, some don't. So one of these days, if it's a numbers game, one of these days I'll get a hit, right?
You wrote a book, Amelie, is that right? Am I saying something right? And we saw.
Yeah, no, you're right. The Room on Rue Amelie. It was my book last year. Yep.
Oh my gosh! So it might be a double, right? You might have a double something.
Well, there you go. I like it. Yeah, just the Kristin Harmel series. I like it.
Kristin, thank you so much. Have fun tomorrow, and for the listeners, if you want to go meet Kristin tomorrow in Orlando at 6:30 at the Quantum Leap Winery, which is at 1312 Wilfred Drive. Go to KristinHarmel.com. Robin will put that website up on the podcast along with the podcast itself. Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking with both of you.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.
Hi, Matt Wilkerson here, your Verizon representative with news that will hum